All right, you're good to go.
Thank you, Alex.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, one and all. This is the regular board meeting of the Board of Directors of the East Bay Regional Park District on October 4, 2022, and we're beginning at 1:07 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll of the board?
Yes, President Coffey. Director Rosario.
Here.
Director Lane.
Here.
Director Waspy.
Here.
Director Wieskamp.
Here.
Director Corbett.
Here.
And President Coffey.
Here.
Thank you.
Yolanda, could you
Um,
introduce staff?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
General Manager Landreth.
Present.
Deputy General Manager Alvarez.
Present.
Assistant General Manager Cook.
Present.
Deputy General Manager O'Connor. AGM Chief Chiobaro. CFO AGM Archer. Acting AGM Kassabaum.
Present.
Acting AGM Gorgian. And General Counsel Burgo. Oh, thank you. Thank you, President Coffey.
All right, thank you. I've asked Director Lane to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand.
Acting AGM Kassabaum. Acting AGM Gorgian. And General Counsel Burgo.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you, Director Lane and Director Waspy. Could you provide our Native American acknowledgement for this afternoon?
Yes, thank you. The East Bay Regional Park District's headquarters is located within the Huichin territory on the unceded lands of the Ohlone Chochenyo speaking peoples, who have continuously lived upon this land since time immemorial. The lands now encompassed within the boundaries of the East Bay Regional Park District are the ancestral territories of the Ohlone, Bay Miwok, and Delta Yokut. Today's Ohlone, Bay Miwok, and Delta Yokut people are thriving, vital members of the greater Bay Area community. They remain intrinsically connected to the land they have stewarded since time immemorial. Please join us in recognizing and honoring this land and their ancestors, elders, descendants, and all other members of their communities.
Thank you, Director Waspy. I want to announce that the board and the district are proud to celebrate National Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15 to October 15. The 2022 Hispanic Heritage Month national theme is Unidos, Inclusivity for a Stronger Nation. The Park District is committed to enhancing diversity, equity, and inclusion and making our agency welcoming and reflective of the communities we serve. Today's meeting is held pursuant to the Brown Act as amended by AB 361. Board members and staff and public may participate via phone or video conferencing. Madam Clerk, we're going to move next to, well, approval of the agenda.
Yeah.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Director Wieskamp moves.
Second.
Director Waspy seconds. Please call the roll.
Yes, President Coffey. Director Corbett.
Aye.
Director Waspy.
Aye.
Director Wieskamp.
Aye.
Director Rosario.
Aye.
Director Lane.
Aye.
President Coffey.
Aye.
Unanimously
So,
approved.
Madam Clerk, would you, we're going to move to public comments next on matters not on the agenda. Would you please describe the procedures for submitting public comments or requesting public comments?
Yes, President Coffey. Public comments can be submitted in three ways. One, by simply emailing me yburial@ebparks.org via voicemail at 510-544-2016. Leave a message and we will transcribe that and give that to the board, or simply by joining the meeting via Zoom link, which is listed on the agenda and posted on the district's website. Public comments will not be read at the meeting, but any written emails or transcribed voice messages will be included in the final board packet. All comments, letters received before the 3 p.m. deadline yesterday have been distributed to the board and will not be read at this meeting. Thank you, President Coffey.
And we thank those who submitted public comment by email. We have all received them and reviewed them. For the meeting, we will proceed with public comment on matters not on the agenda. We have a couple of people in the room physically here at the district. And if you wish to participate in public comment not on the agenda, please raise your Zoom hand as Mike Vandeman has. And we'll go first with the people in the room who would like to take the dais or the podium.
You're going to need to turn that microphone on. You don't have to move it. Just turn it on. And you have 3 minutes.
Nice to see you in person, Kelly.
Thank you. Quick photo from just last month, El Halcón, El Gavilán, the Mission Peak. And this was a real bird. Somebody took a 1.4 meter telescope lens to get that picture. And they're known for their good eyesight. And the responsibility of this board and of the auditing department is to oversee the operations of this agency, this district, especially the budget. And the board approved a project at Mission Peak. According to the newspaper, it said, district board approved a new larger parking lot in September 2016. And here's a link to the newspaper story. If you think the newspaper was lying, you should let us all know because it's right there. And then there's like 20 documents or 10 documents here describing this very project very specifically in great detail with $1.5 million budgeted to back it up. And now, as time goes on, we lose the institutional memory. We lose the board director who voted for this. We lose probably other board directors who voted for this. We lose the acquisition, stewardship, and development department, 2 of them, Mr. Nisbet and Ms. Kelchner, she just disappeared. And but they remember this, and as the new people come in, they won't. The new board director is not going to know this project. And instead, a parasitic project has appeared. What does that mean? It's like the brown-headed cowbird. They sneak in these foreign eggs and expect people to accept them as their own. This is a brood parasite. This is not the real project. The problem with the parasitic project is that it doesn't have a budget. It's stalled and it has no momentum. It's a meaningless placeholder. Now, if it were a real project, that'd be different, but it's not. So unless these things get straightened out, there's going to be some serious problems here because you can't lose the money. You can't lose oversight. You can't lose track of projects. You can't pretend like, swap them in like a magician in the hat and do a magic substitution trick. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's amazing that you could even try this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abreu. Renee Patterson, you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Renee Patterson. I work in business services as an admin analyst in this building, Peralta Oaks, on the 3rd floor. And I'm here to let you know that we're still upset. Some of us are miserable, some of us are unhappy, some of us are sad. Some are angry still. If I asked for people to say, just give me one word, don't tell me a long story, or, don't put super amount of feeling into it, just tell me one word. The one that I get the most is angry, which is kind of surprising, but also a lot of sads, disappointed, and words like that. So people still given the choice would telecommute and not be here in this building. And we just want to remind you that that's the way that we feel. And so I'm here to represent most of the employees. Sorry about that. My battery is running low. It's just a reminder not to forget that we still don't have an approved policy for telecommuting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Renee. Anyone else present in this room? Okay, then, Madam Clerk, you want to call upon those in Zoom? That
Yes,
want
President
public comment?
Coffey. Gonna go Mike Vandeman. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. I've been talking about this for 3 years, and I have yet to receive a response to my telephone calls or emails, specifically Lynn Bourgault. I'd like to talk to her about the fact that the East Bay Regional Park seems to be breaking the law, which is California Penal Code Section 384A. The Ordinance 38, Section 804 says you can't remove plants from a park. But the question is, what is a plant? And it refers to this other law, California Penal Code Section 384A. I don't know why the legislature bothered to create this law if nobody's going to follow it. It says specifically that invasive non-native plants are not considered plants. They're considered weeds, and they Ordinance 38 does not apply to those. And the second exception is for fire suppression. If you're removing plants for fire suppression, there's nothing wrong with that. That's allowed by this law. And I've presented the information. The state of California has designated these plants like French broom, Italian thistle, as what are called noxious weeds. They're also called pests, and they're also called public nuisances. And there's no law against removing a public nuisance, like picking up trash in a park. You can't be arrested or ticketed for removing trash from a park because that's what we want people to do. And the same with removing these plants that the state of California has determined it doesn't want. They're harmful to agriculture, or they're the environment, or both. So I don't know why the park district is afraid to talk about this issue and refuses to respond in any way. And I assume it's the legal department that's making that decision, but they absolutely refuse to talk about it. So I'm still waiting for an answer. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Ross Mitchell. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. It's Ross Mitchell, I'm the president of ASME Local 2428. I have two issues that I'm going to try and talk about in my time today. One is I received 3 different Zoom links at 3 different times for this, to access this board meeting for folks wishing to make public comment. I'm concerned that the link in the board material and still currently online would not get people into this board meeting. So there, I have concerns that there may be folks trying to access this meeting to make public comment that are not able to, and which, makes me question whether this, the district is complying with the Brown Act. The other issue that I have to bring forward is I was made aware over the weekend that members of management met with folks in our interpretive and recreation department and have communicated to that department that masks are now optional for all members of the public inside visitor centers. This is in direct conflict with our current coronavirus prevention policy, which is the subject of mandatory bargaining with ASME 2428 and other represented employees such as the police union. And apparently this was communicated as of 9/26 to supervising naturalists and folks at the Big Break Visitor Center. We've since been told that the district doesn't have the ability to have a mask mandate for members of the public beyond what California Department of Public Health or the local counties have, but there are several other government organizations that still require masks of the public. Berkeley libraries, Oakland libraries, Alameda County courthouses, to name a few. So we have a lot of questions as to why the district, one, didn't notice us of this change. This was only brought to our attention through our members bringing it forward to the chief steward and the union president. And, you know, even once we brought it up, it took several days for us to get a response from the district about these changes. You know, it leaves me with several other questions. Do members of the public need to wear masks to show up to a board meeting in Peralta Oaks? That's also a building open to the public. Or were they being told that they had to wear masks today? And again, it just seems to show that there is not a, either members of the management don't know their responsibility to meet and confer and notify the district of changes that are subject to mandatory bargaining, or they don't care that they have that responsibility. You know, we'll do what we need to defend our bargaining rights. But it's disappointing that we learned about this way, and that I had to bring it to the attention of the board of directors in this manner. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Ross. President Coffey, if I may speak to the Zoom link. Apparently Zoom, Ross, just to let you know and everyone else, apparently there was some kind of update to Zoom that we were not aware of. So it changed our link, adding the ebparks.org, ebparks to the Zoom link. We found that out about 9 o'clock this morning. And so that is why you received more than one link, because if you were inside the building, you could use one link. And if you were outside, with my understanding from IS, the other link worked. So it was something that was technological that we are going to have to address, because Zoom did not notify us either that they were doing that. So just wanted to let you know, we did have everything posted correctly. It was Zoom that made that transition today on us. So thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda. We will move to the, and thank you, Ross, and we will seek some feedback on the issue from management. We'll move to the consent calendar, and we will address specific items on the consent calendar if a board member is asked for discussion on the topic, and we will have it open to public comment if there are public comments on items on the consent calendar. So, Madam Clerk, do we have board member comments pending or questions?
I believe Director Lane, did you have your questions answered? And Director Rosario, did you have your question answered?
I just want to make a quick comment.
Okay.
All right, and mine were answered. Director Corbett.
I have a quick question about I.
All right. Authorization to grant a license to the Alameda County Deputy Sheriff's Activities League.
Director
Yes.
Rosario, what was your comment on?
Mine is on E and G.
Okay.
All right, so let's take item E first in order, then we'll take those three items for discussion. Authorization to purchase 4 Greenworks all-electric utility vehicles. What was the question, Director Rosario? And we'll have Steve come up to respond.
Yeah, mostly comment. I'm very happy to see these green vehicles being purchased. they're proving to be very, very popular. And I was wondering if there is a way of, retiring our diesel and gas ATVs in favor of these, prior to them being obsolete, at the request of if parks really want them, which I would think they do. So if that's a possibility, we can accelerate this program to green our vehicles, especially the ATVs.
Hi, Steve Castile, acting AGM of operations. So your question there, Director Rosario, is you're wondering if we can retire some of the vehicles earlier. We're doing that as much as possible, but what we have is we have an annual fleet replacement program that we go through, and each one has a life cycle to it. As time permits and as it allows, we're systematically going through to all the different areas within the park system and taking a look and evaluating the current equipment that we have. And as we're able to convert them to electric, we're definitely doing that. But everything has a basic term for how long the longevity of the vehicle is. But if we do have an opportunity to replace it, a little bit beforehand, we'll definitely take a look into that. That we go through.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item G, authorization to apply to the United States Forest Service's Community Wildfire Defense Fund. Director Rosario?
Yes, my quick question here is, are these are collaborative grants? And does that mean collaborative on an agency level, wide level, or is it like more, can we include neighborhoods adjacent to parks?
Hi, Katie Hornbeck, Grants Manager. Deborah, did you want to say something first or?
Nope, you go right ahead, Katie.
Great question, Director Rosario. So this grant people can apply as in a collaborative nature. Our application is, we're the lead agency, we're implementing the project. The emphasis on community there is really about making sure that the work is being done in the communities or that will directly benefit them.
The reason I'm asking is because, recently the Friends of Joaquin Miller Park have reached out to us and we've been trying to assist them with them obtaining a grant. So I was wondering if there was a possibility of working with that particular group or group similar to that.
It's certainly possible. If I'm happy to reach out to them if you want to connect them with me at some point, but yes, for some grants, it's definitely beneficial to have partners. For this one, application is due on Friday, so we're a little too late for this one, but possibly in the future.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Then item I, authorization to grant a license to the Alameda County Deputy Sheriff's Activities League. Director Corbett.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm just hoping we could have a little bit more of a report on what this means. I know it's a spot where the deputy sheriff's group wants to continue to work on their garden work, and they're looking for access into the park. And if someone could just sort of explain to us a little bit more, who has the access? Is it just so they can get into their park area or so others can use the park district area, their agricultural area? I'd just like to hear a little bit more about this project.
Good afternoon, Lisa Gorgon, Acting Assistant General Manager. I'm going to turn over to Mike Reeves to respond further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mike Reeves, Chief of Land Acquisition. Director Corbett's good question. The plan for the farm is still in the making, so they're working on getting the permits, and then they'll start work on the ground that's next door to our staging area there within Masonic Homes. The access that would be granted by the park district is we're calling it secondary access. So it's initially to assist in developing the farm site. So as the staff report indicates, it would be the first thing they need to do out there is drill a well And so to bring that equipment out, they would be using May Road because that's a good paved road, and that would allow the equipment to get onto the site. And there'll be some other initial site development activities that would require that access. Once the farm is up and running, the primary access for the folks that are operating the farm, as well as if I don't know what the public visitation around that operation will look like, but anything of that nature, public visitation and regular access by the operators of the farm, that will come from to the south across Masonic Homes property, and not utilizing that secondary access.
So it's primarily to give them access to do some of the work to improve the property.
Correct. It would be when in instances when they have bigger pieces of equipment and whatnot that need to get directly to that site, where the other access to the south that will be developed, I believe, will be remain unpaved, probably be gravelled, but a more circuitous route, and for the purposes of getting bigger equipment and stuff out there on the site, we would have this secondary access point.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. We'll turn to Director Waspy, but I want to ask if there are members in the Zoom room that want to provide public comment on consent items. Please raise your Zoom hand. Director Waspy?
Thank you. So I fully support the granting this license to the Deputy Sheriff's Athletic League, and I fully support Dig Deep Farms. Is there a way we can get an update on what they're doing? I'm a little concerned that I don't know how long they've had a lease at Ardenwood, and there's nothing in the ground there. I'd just like to hear what's going on.
Again, Mike Reeves, Chief of Land Acquisition. Director Waspy, we'll be reaching out after this action today by the board to see where they are in when we can anticipate that they're going to be getting out there to develop the site there at May Road. I see that AGM or Deputy General Manager Jim O'Connor's up at the podium, and maybe he can speak to the Ardenwood farm if that is part of your line of question.
Deputy General Manager Jim O'Connor. Director Waspy, in reference to your question, I believe you're asking about an update on Ardenwood and Dig Deep Farms operations out there. So we did get a start to some farming out there this year. We have some green on the ground, and we'll be harvesting out there. They are also working on a very significant project, which is a cold storage and packing shed development that's going to happen within the farmyard that Dig Deep is part of their lease. So they're working on that. So things are ramping up. It's not up to the same level as we had with our prior concession farmer out there, but they are ramping up slowly, but it's been a slow process.
Okay, I totally support it. And I understand they're ramping up, but I hope we can emphasize to them we have needs also. I mean, we're trying to interpret agriculture and farming, and I think this is the second year in a row, if I'm not mistaken, that we're going to Safeway and buying pumpkins and rolling them out in the dirt and saying, here, come and have a pumpkin patch. And I don't know that we're really interpreting anything of, I mean, at some point,
this was one of the challenges that we addressed early on when we made the decision to pull them on as our leasee farmer, as Tiffany would correct me to say. We have had challenges where we're having to hire outside contractors to do our own farming for our own purposes, our interpretive crop rotations, et cetera. So yes, we're noting this, and we've been talking with them. It's going to be a long-term engagement with them to get them up to speed, but they're aware of our concerns.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Director Lane.
Well, I just want to weigh in too, because, I'm not really a farmer, but I can certainly grow pumpkins. And harvest at Ardenwood has always been huge. And for us to be incapable, evidently, of growing pumpkins, to me is just astonishing. So I would hope that the third year there are some conversations that go on so that we can grow our own pumpkins at Ardenwood.
Thank you. Thank you anyway. At this time, let's move to public comment on consent items. Any requests, Madam Clerk? And I don't see any hand ups. So is there a motion to approve the consent count?
I will make the motion.
Director Corbett,
And I'll second.
Director Lane seconds. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, President Coffey. Director Waspy.
Aye.
Director Corbett.
Aye.
Director Rosario.
Aye.
Director Lane.
Aye.
Director Wieskamp.
Aye.
And President Coffey.
Aye.
Thank you.
So we move to item 2, legal division, amendment to East Bay Regional Park District's Ordinance 38, rules and regs of the Park District to provide nuisance abatement authority and administrative enforcement authority. The executive committee heard this presentation at its last meeting and appreciate Jason coming to us this afternoon. Jason?
Good afternoon, board members. Happy to be here. Jason Rosenberg, Assistant General Counsel. Bear with me for a minute while I pull up my PowerPoint.
Do you need some assistance, Jason?
Okay,
There we go.
I think, there we go. Excellent. Again, good afternoon, board members. I'm really excited to be here to present this item to the full board for consideration. It's been a collaborative effort to get us to this point to present this ordinance amendment. And I can just dive in. Give me 1 second for the. So as you all know, one of the key elements of the Park District is stewardship of its natural resources. And it really factors into all of the Park District's actions, including land management, land acquisition. And this has become increasingly critical given climate change and the amount of land that we control. As a public agency that is formed through state law, we have legal tools that allow us to protect these parklands, but they're different than what cities and counties traditionally have. And over the years, we have faced illegal encroachments, and one of our actions of stewardship is to prevent those illegal encroachments, to manage the land in a sustainable manner. But unfortunately, over time, with the number of neighbors we have, illegal encroachments have popped up, such as diverting streams onto private property for personal water use, altering stream beds without permission, expanding backyards onto Park District property, and diverting storm flow in a manner that's unpermitted. All of these require extensive field staff time and legal staff time to address. And here are some of the examples recently of just the last couple of years of what we've come across. In the top right, that is in Coal Canyon, a neighbor illegally diverted a stream and built some structures without any planning authority. And then the way we became aware of it was through field staff and then CDFW advising us that we've had a stream bed that's been altered. Bottom left is somebody putting up illegal T-stakes and wire fence at Mission Peak. They felt that they needed a buffer fence from their fence line. Also, people have taken upon themselves to extend their yards, creating patios and dumping debris onto our property. This is Pinole Shores. This one is an example of when we had a long time to get compliance. We first started dealing with this encroachment in 1995, and it took a long time. This is finally, we had to initiate legal proceedings in 2011, and this is what it looked like after. And one of the only ways that we were able to get compliance and get reimbursed for the costs was that we placed a lien on the property and the property owner wanted to refinance. So it kind of forced them to come to the table and address the costs that we incurred to get our property back to how it was before the illegal encroachment. So these are just some of the examples of some of the problems that we faced. So what was the solution? So in 2021, our staff, legislative affairs and legal staff worked with Mid-Peninsula, same staff, to come up with a legislative fix for the California to adopt, and that was AB 959. Assemblymember Mullen sponsored this legislation. It was signed into law on September 23rd of 2021, and it basically gave us the ability to adopt an ordinance to declare that an encroachment on parkland was a nuisance and then establish a procedure to collect our costs for addressing that nuisance. So that's why I'm here today. I have attached to the staff report is a proposed ordinance that would essentially give us this ability to do a few things. There's two parts to this ordinance, and I'll first talk about the nuisance abatement, and the second slide is about administrative citations. But for purposes of nuisance abatement, we'll be adding chapter 10 to ordinance 38, and that would allow us to declare, basically state that anything that is an unauthorized encroachment on Park District land is a nuisance, and then it gives us the ability to remove those, abate those encroachments, and collect costs that we incur for those. Additionally, we'll be able to issue administrative citations for these unlawful encroachments and then recover any fees, including attorney's fees, that we have incurred to seek compliance. Lastly, if we go through this whole process and the property owner has still not paid the cost, we have the ability to record a lien against the property. These are all just one tool that we still are going to be using our normal methods of working with neighbors, our good neighbor policy, trying to get compliance with every means that we have. This is just one more tool in the tool belt that we have that will allow us to provide a little better protection of our parklands. And then additionally, this ordinance also allows us to enforce our Ordinance 38 park rules by means of an administrative citation. So currently, Park District police officers respond to Ordinance 38 violations such as dog walking, campground curfew, by issuing a warning or a criminal citation. This gives us another tool where it's like essentially be treated like a parking ticket and it can be issued on the spot. So those are the two kind of, I ran through this quickly. I'm available for questions, but essentially this is going to give us more tools. I want to definitely give a thanks to the field staff, because this is something that we've worked in conjunction with field staff whenever these issues arise. They've helped us to kind of identify this need and craft a response. So they also get the photo credits from the PowerPoint. I didn't give the copyright, but that's how it'd come into us. We'd get these photos and then we'd start to work it through the process. And we found that the current process, we just kind of get to a dead end because we didn't have this tool. So now we're proposing that you adopt the ordinance that revises the Ordinance 38 to allow us nuisance abatement authority, administrative enforcement authority, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Jason. Are there questions from board members or comments? Director Corbett?
I just wanted to say this is great that we're looking at this issue, this problem. And, we are concerned about how it protects our parklands and saves us from potential fires and those sorts of things. So thank you for looking into this. Do we have any idea about how many projects that might come in front of us based on this new rule?
The number, it will really depend on how they come in. I mean, in our experience, we're trying to get our office has seen maybe 1 to 2 a year that would be appropriate for this type of administrative process, but maybe more if we now are staff understands how we can use this tool to get better compliance. But it's really, again, deterrent and a last ditch effort. We really want to be able to get voluntary compliance with our property neighbors.
Would you say that staff has given us information that there are sites, several sites like this?
Yeah, I mean, we're aware of sites that we could definitely initiate. I mean, there's, I think, one site that we're aware of that once we have this ordinance in place, we can send the property owner a letter that's not pretty please, but it actually has force behind it.
Okay, thank you very much. And is there like a set of, do you have a booklet of information of items like this, or are you just waiting for things to come before you, or?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Director Corbett. The next step that our office will work on is preparing forms, and we can work with public affairs to make sure that it's on the website as well. But the first step was to get the board to take action to create this ordinance, and then next in our work plan would be forms and letters that field staff can use easily.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Director Lane.
Thank you for the presentation. We do, you had the ability to get attorney fees for that. Is that attorney fees that for attorneys who work for the district, or is that apply only to attorneys we've contracted with?
Thank you for the question, Director Lane. The way that the ordinance is structured, and this is from state law, is that attorney's fees are available to in-house counsel or outside counsel, but it's only for the prevailing party. So that's kind of California due process requirements, that you have to be the prevailing party, the winning party in a proceeding in order to recover attorney's fees. But it could be our time or outside counsel time.
Other director comments or questions? Director Waspy.
Yeah, thanks, Jason, for all your great work on this and mid-pens and collaboration with them and Assemblymember Mullen. I think this is a great thing for us, because I know of a lot of encroachments that I could pick out right away. I'm really interested though in the administrative citation, and I don't know if we can drill down a little bit, but I was troubled by the sentence that said, when criminal citations are issued by our police officers, they're often not enforced by the respective county district attorney. And I'm wondering, is that a blanket? I mean, I don't know who in the district attorney's office is in charge of whether or not these things go to a trial or whatever they do. But I mean, do they just say it's a regional park citation, so they throw it over their shoulder? Or does this happen all the time, or is it frequent? Or I mean, it sounds like it's a policy that occurs.
I'll let Council Borgo answer.
Well, I just want to say that in my experience, they do this with a lot of public agencies. It's not just East Bay Regional Parks. It's just they have to weigh their own staff time and whether or not they think something is worth their time to pursue. And they often find that these types of kind of misdemeanor citations are not worth their while.
So let me follow this up. So if I get a parking citation in a regional park, I can assume that I can just not pay it?
A parking citation is it's like an administrative citation. That's a fine that you have to pay. And I definitely recommend you pay your parking tickets before they go up. They will find you and hunt you down. But it's on the criminal side where you have to you have to have a prosecutor assigned to charge the matter. That's where you find the district attorneys not pursuing the matter.
And just to add to that, I mean, in the beginning stages of this process, we spoke to the DA on both counties, and they were supportive of this because of, not that they have any animosity towards our citations, it's just a caseload issue. And by having this administrative citation, it just gives us a lot more autonomy over the cases we choose to cite and enforce. And like Council Borgo said, with this administrative citation, it will now be treated like a parking ticket, and you just got to pay it, or else there's a collection agency and a processing party that handles that, is able to track it much better than if it was assigned to a third party DA.
Okay, but we'll incur more costs, right? We have to pay the collection agency, right?
I don't know the cost structure of the collection agency. I understand it's a workable structure for the way the police department functions now for parking, and it seems to be working fine. And we took their feedback on this in order to make it function the same way based on their request.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other board comment? So we'll move to public comment. I see Mike's hand up. Are there other requests for public comment on this item, Madam Clerk?
I had my hand.
Mike Vandeman, are you commenting on item 2A?
Yeah, I'm commenting on what you just talked about.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go
And-
to Mike and then Kelly.
Yeah.
There's another serious encroachment that I didn't hear mentioned. And don't laugh, but a lot of homeowners plant non-native plants like Cotoneaster, Pride of Madero, pampas grass, and so on. The birds eat the seeds and fly over the parks and poop on those seeds into the park and introduce non-native plants into the parks. So I don't know what the solution is, but we shouldn't be planting non-native plants anywhere near the parks. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Abreu, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Yeah, this has been going on for many, many years. The people who drive into their vehicles, park their vehicles illegally on the park district's sacred lands of Mission Peak or wherever, and get a $50 ticket. But if they're walking in their own 2 feet during hours that are prohibited because of the political restrictions at Mission Peak, for example, they get a $300 fine, and they get a little ambush set up. And this is $300 versus $50. This is for basically the same crime, for walking versus parking. That's not right. And you, if they weren't enforcing those $300 tickets, you deserved it. Those were horrendous. Those are despicable, overzealous prosecutions, and way too costly. Then let's talk about the watercourse protection ordinance. Alameda County has little teeny creeks and streams everywhere. As of right now, the Director of Public Works, Mr. Daniel Waldesenbet, has let USGS erase most of those small streams from the watercourse protection ordinance of Alameda County. So there is no creek there. And if there's no creek, there is no protection. The water courses are being filled in. They're right next to Fremont. They were, building dirt bridges and stuff and not getting enforcement. This is the kind of ridiculous kind of stuff that happens out there. And I'm glad that you figured out that you do have creeks. But some people, half the creek, literally about half the creeks in the county, the smaller ones are unprotected. And finally, this Ordinance 38, it's like the US, I've counted the words. I've counted the words in this ordinance. It's longer than the US Constitution, and everybody knows the First Amendment. Everybody knows the Equal Protection Clause. Everybody knows separation of power. Everybody knows a few of the basics of the US Constitution, and nobody, not even your own enforcement officers or law enforcement who are working for you, don't know what Ordinance 38 is. You need to name these things. You need to have names for different sections of Ordinance 38. So when they walk up to me and say, I'm violating Ordinance 38, and I say, what are you talking about? What part of it? They'll know. You need to train your people on what is Ordinance 38. This thing is huge. And it's this shapeless morass of unknown lawlessness or laws that nobody knows because it hasn't been trained, it has no names, and it's so huge that no human being can keep it in their head. Thank you.
Thank you. We will.
I have a question.
Yes, Director Corbett.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering if this does pass today, would we have an opportunity to publicize on our website that people should be aware of this so that people can, report or have something done about protecting our land based on some of these issues.
Jason?
Hi, Jason Rosenberg, Assistant General Counsel. Once this
I'm
passed,
sorry, I can barely hear you.
sorry, is that better, Director Corbett?
I think your mic wasn't on all the way.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'll try again. Jason Rosenberg, Assistant General Counsel. I would be happy to work with Public Affairs to make sure we get the word out on this new ordinance. That'll be in addition to the legal requirement to publish this ordinance in a newspaper of general circulation.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much. Good to hear.
Thank you, Jason. I will look to my colleagues for a motion to approve the resolution. It's on page 48 of our board packet to approve amendment to the East Bay Regional Park District's Ordinance 38 as presented by Jason. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Director Waspy, second. Director Lane, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, President Coffey, Director Rosario,
Aye.
Director Corbett,
Hi.
Director Waspy,
Aye.
Director Wieskamp,
Aye.
Director Lane,
Aye.
and President Coffey.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3, ASD Division. Item A, authorization to award a construction contract to Lynn Marine on the Miller Knox Ferry Point Pier project.
Good afternoon, board members. I'm Ren Bates, Acting Chief of Design and Construction. I'm pleased to be here today to introduce this next item as stated by President Coffey, to award a contract to Lind for the Remove Ferry Point Pier project. There's a little bit of background before I turn it over to Shun Yu, who's the civil engineer and project manager on this project. I'd like to just give some background. Large sections of this pier have already fallen off, and staff's concerned that future collapsed sections could float into the Richmond shipping channel, causing a hazard to navigation. Therefore, removing the Ferry Point Pier is a very high priority. To that end, practically all departments in the district have been working hard on this project since mid-2021. Eddie Willis in planning is the overall project manager and is coordinating work being performed by stewardship, planning, risk, operations, finance, public affairs, grants, and lastly, design and construction. At this point, I'll turn it over to Shun Yu, who's the civil engineer managing the design and construction part of the project, and she will continue with the presentation. Shun.
Okay. Let me work on the slideshow. Good afternoon. Thank you, President Coffey, members of the board, and all the public members for the opportunity to talk with you today about the Remove Ferry Point Pier project. The action before you today is for authorization to award a construction contract with Lynn Marine Inc. and to transfer and appropriate funds for the Remove Ferry Point Pier project. Ferry Point Pier is part of the Mini-Knob regional shoreline, and it's located at Point Richmond. The Ferry Point Pier was built in the 1900s by Santa Fe Railroad Company and served it as a terminal for passenger ferries and intermodal freight. The passenger ferry service ended in 1933, but the pier continued to be used for freight and barge operations until 1975. In 1992, Park District acquired the pier along with an adjacent 17-acre parcel of land, both of which was incorporated into the Mini-Knob regional shoreline. The right-hand side of these two photos were took in year 1912 and 1915. The historical pier has significantly deteriorated over several decades. As Ren mentioned it before, last sections of the pier broken off in January and August 2021, requiring emergency actions to remove and dispose of the debris before they become a hazard to marine navigation and environment. The emergency contract for the debris removal work that were amounted to $470,000 were ratified by board resolution in February 2021 and September 2021. A virtual assessment was performed by Muffin Nickel in April 2021. These 4 pictures are some of the pictures in Muffin and Nickel's assessment report. The finding is that most of the timber piles have severe deterioration with more than 50% loss of cross-section in the intertidal area. The fender wall has severe deterioration in the intertidal area. The superstructure, including the pile caps, stringers, and deck, are in fair condition. Given the extent of the deterioration, it's not feasible to restore the pier to its original configuration. With that, the Park District proposed to deconstruct and remove the derelict structures that are no longer in use, are structurally unsound, and are at risk of falling into the San Francisco Bay. The other portion of the pier, including the concrete public fishing pier constructed in 2001 and the historical steel and concrete gateway structure, are not considered to be at risk of collapse and will not be affected by this work. The Park District advertised the construction contracts on July 15 this year, with bids due August 12. 6 bids were submitted and opened it. Lynn Marine of Petaluma, California, with a bid in the amount of $1,083,000, was the lowest responsive bid. The bid result showed it on this table. This is the budget information for the project. As part of the action today, we are seeking to transfer $225,000 from major infrastructure repair and replacement fund into the project budget. This fund, in combination with existing project funds, should give us adequate funding to award the construction contract with Lynn Marine. Additional funding will be needed for professional services, biomonitoring, and taxes and materials for cultural resource exhibits. Pier removal will be in summer of 2023. With that, again, the action before you today is the following. Award a construction contract in the amount of $1,083,000 to Lynn Marine of Petaluma, California, in the lowest responsible bidder for construction of the removed Ferry Point Pier project, and authorize the transfer of $225,000 from the major infrastructure renovation and replacement fund, and appropriate the funds into the removed Ferry Point Pier project at Minnetonka Regional Shoreline. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yes, thank you, Director Coffey, President Coffey, Directors Lisa Gorgon, Acting Assistant General Manager of Acquisition Stewardship and Development. I just also wanted to add regarding this item that following the bid opening, we did receive 3 advisory emails from different trade organizations concerned with Lynn's labor practices. We reviewed these concerns and determined that the information was not current or not a basis for disqualifying them as bidders. And so are proceeding with this recommendation and didn't find a reason to change the recommendation. So that said, relative to these allegations, we will ensure that Lynn is held to the district's contract that is subject to federal, state, and local laws and regulations and ordinances and the governing codes. So we do want to note that. So with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. That's good for us to know, given the letters we received from building trades organizations. It's also very nice and a rare opportunity to see a bid come in that's well under the estimates. So we don't get that much these days. So I appreciate that. Members of the board, Director Corbett.
Thank you very much. I would just ask if somehow the folks don't follow all the way through on their contract, what happens next?
Council.
Director Corbett, we would review our options under the contract and pursue obviously voluntary compliance and then whatever legal remedies we have, but the contract would be a binding contract, so.
Well, please explain what you just meant by that. So if they don't follow through, what, we fine them? How does that work?
Well, usually with a contract dispute, you try to work it out. And then if you are unable to work it out, you go to court and have a judge enforce the contract.
So they would have to take care of it no matter what, or pay to have it done?
Well, going to court always has its risks, but usually if you have a good binding contract, which I think we do, and I mean, I'm not sure why they wouldn't perform under the contract. We've worked with this contractor before and they have performed well. And so we're not too overly concerned, but if we did have to have that kind of a dispute, we certainly have a lot of expertise in pursuing contract actions.
So basically they would have to follow through no matter what?
Well, basically, we would hope that the courts would be on our side and that we would have a good case. But yes, typically, when you have a contract that's clear and unambiguous, you have to perform the contract.
But I'm just wondering, is there some sort of penalty within our agreement with them or contract with them? Is there anything that specifically states what happens?
I would have to look at the particular contract. Some contracts have liquidated damages provisions that apply under certain circumstances. So it's hard to give a general answer to that question.
Well, perhaps you could look at that real quick before the end of the meeting and let us know.
We'll ask council to get back to you.
Yeah,
on it
we're
directly.
actually not asking for authorization to enter the contract. We're asking for authority to award the contract. So the contract negotiations will occur separately.
Right, but that sort of document, that should be written somewhere already, right?
Yes, it is. And I will follow up with you separately. I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Director Rosario.
Yeah, I was just curious as to how we went about investigating the allegations that were made by the 3 advisory councils.
Director Rosario, I'll have acting AGM Lisa Gorgon address what their normal process is, but I will let you know that some of the complaints that were made or concerns that were set forth in the letters had to do with outdated concerns that from like 2016. Others have to do with things related to OSHA that aren't cognizable in a bid in a bid opening. That's if there's something related to OSHA, that's something between the party and OSHA separately. It's not a disqualifying event, but I'll let Lisa explain what they do in terms of checking with the Department of Industrial Relations for bids.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you again, Lisa Gorgon, Acting Chief of Acquisition, Stewardship and Development. We in the board report, we did list our typical bid vetting. And so as council mentioned, that includes checking for debarment, checking their bonds, checking to make sure that they have the correct license for the work that they're doing. We check to make sure that the subcontractors are listed, who are listed to do the work, can do the work. And with the some of the specific allegations that we did receive, we, Director Rosario, to answer your question, we looked at what was alleged and then we verified it with the information that the contractor that Lynn had supplied to us and found that it wasn't true. So.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Other board questions? Back to Director Corbett.
Yes, I did have another question that I didn't get to fit in there yet, but could we go to the map that shows the site and points out what items would have to be taken down? Could we take a look at that photo, please?
Yeah, sure.
She got it.
Okay. Yes,
Oop, hold on.
that was the
Second.
one.
I know. Hold on.
Okay, so can you please make it clear and help me understand what items are going away? Which items remain?
So the North Pier here will go away. And then the South Pier here will go away. And then this fish pier will remain. The gantry structure and this runway will remain. And we will doing a little bit cleanup at this area. We only, take care of the steel that falling into the water and take out some of the deteriorated stringer on the top of the piling here. So this portion will remain, the gantry structure will remain, this runway will remain.
And the public would be able to walk on both those sides.
The public will be able to work on the public fishing pier for sure, but they won't able to work on this runway and the gantry because the existing condition don't allow them to. We don't have access to this runway and a gantry, but they will have access to this public fishing pier.
Okay, that will just be something that's visual, the other side. But people couldn't move on to it.
Right.
Yeah. And are there any historical violations of removal of any of these items as part of the history that was there? Have anybody brought anything up about that?
This is Lisa Gorgon again. I do have Brian Holt on, Chief of Planning and GIS. We did, as Ren said at the beginning of this presentation, this has really been a cross-district effort. And so we did go to the City of Richmond's Historic Committee to present this. And so we are responding to some of their requests to provide interpretation of the parts of the pier that we're removing. And so we are in compliance with that. And I see Brian, so I'm going to let him finish.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Brian Holt, Chief of Planning, Trails and GIS. Yeah, absolutely, Director Corbett. The historic significance of this structure was the first thing that kind of came to mind when we realized that we have an emergency situation here that we need to respond to, but it is historically significant structure. So that is, we did go to the City of Richmond Historic Resources Board, and who voted to support the action to remove the pier with some conditions that I can explain. And then as part of the permitting process, we do have to go through the State Historic Preservation Officer, who will also issue a MOA for us that will stipulate how we should treat the historic resource as it's being removed. And this is not a rare thing, right? Historic resources often outlive their usefulness. And this is a situation where we absolutely looked at what are the costs of restoring and protecting the pier versus what are the costs of removing it. And it was found that it's just not feasible to retain the historic integrity and fix the pier, and it would just be insanely expensive. So what we have done is first, we're going through and doing a full historic documentation. So we're photographing the pier, getting all the historic information that we can. So there's a historic record of the significance of the site. So that history is preserved. There's photo documentation that comes with that. And then part of the reason, and you asked about the gantry, part of the reason that we are keeping that is because that is visually the most visually significant historic structure. So we can continue to convey and interpret the historic significance of it through the protection of that gantry. And then there were some other conditions asking that we retain some of the old rail line and perhaps some of the old pier structure and incorporate it into the park somehow that we could then interpret it. So that's how we're approaching that. And so far we have pretty broad support for our approach there.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other board comments? Director Lang.
Thank you very much for that description addressing the history of this pier that we're removing, and I appreciate the map that you gave us in our materials. Always like those maps. I do think the historical, the step that you went through to speak to the Historic Commission in Richmond could have been part of the staff report and would have been a helpful thing. So we can make sure that report is part of the minutes. I think that would be helpful in looking at people reading about this in the future. So I had one question that was answered, and but my other is the disparity in the engineers expected bid and what we were able to receive, the engineer's estimate. Could you speak to that? I mean, that's of course it's always nice to see, as Director Coffey mentioned, but that is a pretty big difference. So could you comment on that, please?
Sure. Lisa Gorgon, speaking again, with engineers' estimates, they're estimates. And so the engineers are using the best knowledge that they have, but there's other information that they don't have. So as we heard Ren and Shun say, this is a contractor who's been on site, done previous work, is familiar with this, so that could play into it. We just don't know all the reasons why on a project like this, especially because it's intertidal, it's in the water. There's a lot of unknowns, and so estimates often reflect those unknowns. And so we may see from a contractor who's more familiar with those conditions, those estimates tend to be conservative. And so I think that's what we're seeing here. We have similar situations where when we're working in other complex situations where we have an engineer's estimate and we have an unforeseen issue, and we're back in front of you asking for change orders because we've had some unforeseen issues. So I think the important thing with estimates is really they are estimates, and sometimes there's situations that where there's fluctuations in the bids we receive back.
Well, and then I have a odd recommendation that may not be possible, but if any of you have been around any 3 or 4 or 5-year-olds recently, I mean, they're always very interested in large vehicles or, big construction projects. And so, if there's any preschools that are in the vicinity, when we're going to work there, you might let them know that there would be a really exciting project for their preschoolers to look at from a safe distance. Yes. That's what I have. And I do always like it if people really pay attention to the historical qualities of this, because it's hard for people to understand how important the railroad was in taking down the hill and in its existence coming out of the Richmond area. It's a very important part of their history. So thank you for your work on this.
Thank you. Other board questions, Director Waspy?
Well, just, I share your concern, or not concern, I think it's interesting, but now that we've published this, and the contractor who bid this probably got yelled at by his boss because he's $500,000 lower than the next lowest bidder. And it seems like all the other bidders are in the same neighborhood. And then he's $1.2 million lower than our engineer bid, and he's reading this. I know he is because I used to do this kind of stuff. So what's our safeguard that he can only get about 162,000 out of us for contingency, especially if it's something that's underwater? Talk about unforeseen problems. Is there a way he can get more than 162,000 in change orders out of this project?
It's a great question, Director Waspy. I think we've learned that there are we have had similar projects that have gone beyond the construction contingency that we've allotted, and it is for unknown conditions, as Lisa has stated. So I believe the intent is to keep them to this, but I can't speak to what they may find or what they won't find. I understand the issue is the lower bid, and so contractually we are hoping they will do the work for that, and that they've looked at so in other words, they can't do anything that is not unforeseen. The only way they could have additional change orders is if there's something that's completely unforeseen, not in the contract documents, not in our agreement, that allows them to come back. And at that point, that is negotiable. That's not something that we're just going to say, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to pay you for that. That's something that we'll look at. We have consultants that are looking at this. Our own staff will look at it. And it's something that we would negotiate in terms of that cost, knowing what it was. And so there's no way that, in other words, if anything in excess of the actual contract document, the contract, and not any other change orders, is completely negotiable and has to be approved by the district.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Ren. Madam Clerk, do we have any requests for public comment on this item?
No, President Coffey, I do not.
Any members of the Zoom room want to raise their hands?
Looking right now, I don't see any hands
Not
raised.
seeing any. We'll move to seek a motion to approve the resolution presented on page 60 of our board packet to authorize the award of the construction contract and to transfer and appropriate funds in the amount of $225,000. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Director Waspy moves to approve the resolution. Second?
I'll second.
Director Wieskamp. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, President Coffee, Director Lane,
Aye.
Director Corbett,
Aye.
Director Rosario,
Aye.
Director Wieskamp,
Aye.
Director Waspy,
Aye.
and President Coffee.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Next, move to item 3B, authorization to amend a contract with AECOM to increase the contracted amount per year and authorize a contract extension regarding the biological monitoring and reporting support for the implementation of the wildfire hazard reduction and resource management plan. That's a mouthful.
Okay, thank you, members of the board, President Coffey, Matt Grawl, Chief of Stewardship, and I'm here today to introduce the item, and Kristen Van Dam, our Ecological Services Coordinator, is going to make the presentation. But I just wanted to acknowledge often, when amendments to projects often occur when there's usually a problem or maybe a climatic event where we've had a rain event that changes the scope of a project or there's unknown conditions. Today's item is a good news item. And we're really here because we're doing more fuel management work than we expected. And we're doing more work when we issued this contract. We're doing a lot more work than when we issued it. And that's really because of several factors. And Kristen will highlight these in detail in her presentation. But I just really wanted to highlight that we've been increasing an increasing amount of fuel reduction projects over the last few years because of the increased staffing in the fire department, and then also the drought and tree dieback that we've been experiencing. So that's really increased the demand to do more fuel reduction projects. And so this amendment will increase the contract capacity for biological monitors so we can maintain regulatory compliance where we keep up with the increasing demand for fuel management. And so I also wanted to acknowledge that the fire department staff are here in the Zoom room to support this and answer any questions after Kristen's presentation.
Thank you, President Coffey and Board of Directors. Good afternoon. Kristen Van Dam, Ecological Services Coordinator and Stewardship. I'm here to ask you for a very important favor.
Can you speak a little louder, please?
Yes.
Bring the
There we
microphone
go.
closer.
How's
There
that?
we go.
Very important favor today. As Matt mentioned, our fuels management program, you're well aware, has been accelerating rapidly over the past 5 years that I've been in charge of biological compliance for this program. We work incredibly closely together as a team, stewardship, the fire department, and our independent consultants who are now AECOM to meet the regulatory requirements for these permits. We first contracted with AECOM in 2019. They've been providing exemplary compliance ever since then, in very close contact with our fuels management team, including all of our fuels reduction coordinators. Everything that these contractors do is required for our fuels reduction projects by our permits, but it's also our way to do our due diligence and to protect the environment when we do these types of activities. So I just wanted to give you a little background on the work. We have added over 14 new positions in the fire department for fuels management in the past 3 years, including 4 fuels reduction coordinators who are our project managers that are out there on the sites every day working with our contractors and our biological consultants to get this work done. We spend approximately $5 million a year through these projects on our fuels reduction work. And so because of this growth, of course, the demand for our compliance has increased. We have many biologists out on site almost every day, sometimes 40, 50, 60 days per quarter, out there looking at these projects and doing compliance, making sure that there are no equipment leaks, making sure that there are no bird nests, making sure that we are meeting our obligations to our permit requirements every single minute that we have machinery on site. The consultants also complete annual assessments. These are also required by our permits. And we are up to 55 fuels reduction projects and counting to do these post assessments that are required for 10 years after each project initial entry is completed. And in addition, at least 225 to 250 days of monitoring per year in addition to this work. Just wanted to show you some photos of our projects. These are the types of sites that you'll see our monitors out on. They do everything from ensuring trail safety if there are pedestrians that are walking around the project site, to looking out for wildlife, to assisting our project managers in compliance with the crews that are out there. They do all these things and more to make sure these projects are in compliance. There's another example. We are actually required to maintain a specific depth and area of wood chip distribution in our projects. We can't just dump them anywhere in big piles. We have to distribute them in a safe manner and hopefully so that they will disappear, disintegrate over the 10-year performance monitoring period that we have for our permits. And our monitors are out there making sure that our wood chip piles are compliant. So that's actually a pretty large proportion of the work that they're doing when we're chipping out there on our sites. Here's a very important one. You've all heard about Alameda whipsnake. When we're out working in critical or potential habitat for Alameda whipsnake, we must have a special approved monitor who has actually handled the species, can identify the species, and is capable of moving the species if it's found on the site. It's not easy to find those people. So this is one of the examples of kind of the exceptional level of achievement that these folks have to have in order to be monitoring compliance on our projects. This particular photo is of a monitor checking the area in front of a masticator before the person moves the masticator forward into a new area of brush that could potentially be occupied by Alameda whipsnake. So you can see it's pretty important work. So we're asking today to accommodate this demand to help our fire department continue to do their work amid this increased workload that I'm sure will only increase every year. We would like to renew our current contract with AECOM for an additional 3 years and increase the annual contract amount from $412,000 to $540,000 per year to accommodate the increased amount of work. So that's a total contract amount of $1,600,000, which is approximately 10% of our annual fuels management budget. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Can we bring down the slides so I can look around the room and see my colleagues?
There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So board member comments. I see Director Corbett.
Thank you very much. I just want to say I'm so happy to see this presentation. There's been so many years people have been working to try to continue to make the area safe and safe as much as we can from fires. And I can remember, I don't want to feel this old, but I can remember over 30 years ago, I think it was, when we had the huge, terrible fire up in the Oakland Hills. And we have been doing so much since that year to try to continue to make the hillsides a safe area. And every year figuring out ways to make it safer in our hills. So thank you so much for all the extra work that has been done. And, you know, this year in particular, take a look. We really haven't had anything like past years. We had a lot of safety and we've had a lot of great programs that have kept the use in our park districts restricted in a way to prevent fires. So anyway, thanks for all the wonderful work everybody's doing. And it is quite impressive what's happened in the approval of saving us away from fires. Let's keep doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Other comments? Director Wieskamp.
I appreciate the meticulous work. I'm watching somebody out there trying to find that very mysterious whipsnake, and that can't be an easy job, but it shows we're paying attention to small details, and I appreciate that. It's not an easy thing out in that busy process. So good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Lane.
Yes, I'm assuming AECOM is a name of a company. It doesn't stand for initials.
Yeah, it's AECOM is what we often call them, but it's a consulting firm. Yes.
Okay. So I have a question. And I'm so glad you're bringing us good news. So are other fire districts required to have people observing and providing biological compliance when they enforce and manage their fuel breaks?
So Matt Grawl, Chief of Stewardship again. Yes, I mean, it really depends on where they're working. You know, if they're working in an area that has endangered species, like many of our lands, then and if they should have those permits in place and would need to comply with those permits. Now, we are different than some agencies because of the large area we have that's occupied by Alameda whipsnake and also the California red-legged frog. So often when someone may be maintaining vegetation along the side of a road or in other areas that are more impacted, they may not have these same restrictions, but we're out in sort of almost pristine natural habitat that has been unimpacted, it's critical habitat for these species, then these requirements come into play. So other agencies that have these critical habitats and have permits from CDFW and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service would need to meet these requirements.
All right, well, that's good to know because it seems to me like in fire districts of small or large tend to do these really destructive fuel breaks, and I've always looked at them, or often looked at them, and wondered what they might be destroying. So I'm hoping Fish and Wildlife and other regulatory agencies are paying attention to what they're doing. So thank you.
Other directors, questions or comments? Director Waspy.
Thank you for your report, Kristen, and thanks for all the great work. I obviously support this. I think it's a great thing to do. I think the expansion of the fuels reduction folks in the fire department is probably the best thing we can do, because I think wildfire is probably our greatest threat in this park district, which made me think of a couple things, and it's nothing, I don't know if we want to talk about that now, but I'd be interested. So if we're spending $500,000 for biological monitors and make sure we're doing everything right before we create the devastation that we're going to create, or improvement we're going to create, pardon me. I know that in our war room, that acronym includes resource recovery. So what happens if we burn 1,000 acres in Tilden Park, or pardon me, you pick it out, the most sensitive area that we have in the park district? So I don't think it's going to be like the Oakland, well, the Oakland fire there was hardly any parkland in the Oakland fire, but we are going to have to think about now, because we've gone so far down this road, how do we recover? Will we need to be including biological monitors and make sure we recreate the exact same, or obviously not the exact same habitat, leave out the eucalyptus probably, but is that going to be something down the road that we'll do that? That'll be part of the whole deal once we do have fires that are catastrophic or big, large, that would suggest that, well, you can't just leave it like we used to in the old days and walk away and let the backrest come back and the eucalyptus come back. I don't know that that's a question.
Yeah.
I mean, it will be part of the deal, and we'll need biological monitors, right? And people like this consulting firm.
It depends on the work. Sorry, Kristen, Ecological Services Coordinator again. Fires are a little bit different because they're incidents. And so in terms of habitat recovery, it's a lot more fun because it's not impacting anything a lot of the time. And I don't want to get on a soapbox, but we do have a fire affected landscape full of eucalyptus out on our parklands right now that we are hoping to plan to do a restoration for. So we're absolutely looking at that. There are funds becoming available, we hope, for that kind of action. And yeah, that's, the combination for us, it's going to be post-disaster mitigation of going back in and hopefully getting rid of those dangerous landscapes for good. This particular one has burned twice so far in our tenure as we know it, and getting some native habitat back there on the landscape, some resilient, fire resilient habitat. So that's the hope. Thank you for asking.
Director Rosario, any questions or comments? No. Well, this strikes me as a ongoing issue for us. That is, beyond the 3-year term of this extension, we will need to be doing the equivalent biological monitoring and compliance monitoring in general. Is there a reason this can't be done by employed professionals as opposed to using consultants?
And Matt Grohl, Chief of Stewardship. I mean, the issue is capacity. I mean, and staff capacity and having enough staff to do this work. At any one time on this project, we can have 6 to 8 active sites at one time. And then if you combine that with our routine maintenance program, that's another, we often have an active 4 to 5 sites at a time being constructed. All those sites often need biological monitors. So we just don't have the staffing capacity within stewardship to meet those demands. And it's often very cyclical. So we can have certain periods of time where it's, you might have 10 active sites, and then other times where you may only have 1 or 2. And so it's challenging to have a staffing model, have enough staff to meet those demands. And that's why we've been using contractors.
Okay.
And also, I guess the other aspect is there's specific requirements for the species and expertise. So let's say if we needed 6 Alameda whipsnake monitors, we would need 6 people with the qualifications to monitor whipsnake. And it is challenging to get the handling experience with whipsnake. We do have staff that are getting their experience and getting more qualified, but that's the other limitation.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Director Corbett?
Thank you. That was really good to hear too. But do we have any specific sites where staff does work on these projects? I mean, I know I've heard of some before, but could you name some for us that we do have now?
Yeah, I can give you, actually Assistant Fire Chief Healy is here and he might be better able to speak to the projects than myself. But I can tell you that we have projects going on right now in Redwood. We have a very large project in Anthony Chabot that involves the novel use of a carbonator to dispose of wood debris. We have Redwood, and we have upcoming work in Wildcat as well. And also in Claremont Canyon, which is actually occupied by Alameda whipsnake. Just a few.
Great, thank you so very much.
All right, if there are members of the public in our Zoom room who would like to comment, you could raise your hand. Madam Clerk, do we have any requests for public comment?
No, President Coffee.
All right, and seeing none, we can then move to a motion. We'll entertain a motion to authorize the amendment to the contract to extend it 3 years for biological monitoring and reporting support as set forth on page 70 of our board packet. Is there a motion?
So move.
Director Lane, Director Rosario seconds. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, President Coffee. Director Corbett.
Aye.
Director Wasby.
Aye.
Director Wieskamp.
Aye.
Director Lane.
Aye.
Director Rosario.
Aye.
And President Coffee.
Aye. Thank you much. Thank you for the
Mhm.
presentation.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. General Manager's comments. There will be no staff presentation. Any other comments besides?
That is my comment.
That is.
Succinct.
Thank you for your brevity. Council announcements from closed session.
No announcements, President Coffee. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to board comments. And let's see, I'll go around the room. First on my screen is Director Wieskamp, then Director Rosario, then Director Corbett.
Okay, very briefly, on the 28th, I attended the Finance Committee meeting. On the 29th, we had the soft opening and of Tyler Ranch at Sunol that involved inviting local Sunolians. And as far as I could tell, it was pretty pleasant and positive. I think a few of the people I know commented about the roadway coming in. And I said, really, that is county issue. And if they had something they felt needed to change, that they would have to talk to the county about it. But I thought it was a beautiful job. Stab did a great job there. It's a lovely site. And I can only say for those who like challenging hikes, this is going to be a good place for you to go because it looks, maybe it'll even compete with Mission Peak. I don't know. I should ask Director Wasby, does he think he's going to compete with Mission Peak? When you get to him. Anyway, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Director Rosario. Yes.
Okay, great. Second, I'm just having a little trouble with my computer here. Can somebody else go ahead of me because I'm having trouble bringing up my stuff.
Okay, we'll go to Director Corbett, then back to you, Director Rosario, and then to Director Lane.
Okay, I'm just going to talk about 2 items that happened during that 2-week period. The first, September 23rd, I had the opportunity to have a project briefing for what will be happening along Peralta Oaks and the work done as we work on opening our new facility, and had an opportunity to meet with several members of staff to talk about that. It's part of my district. So I'd say one of the most important things could be happening in my district over the years, but I appreciate them for the work. And I know we're going to have some more discussions and talk about how we ensure that we can get word from our neighbors in the public area, explain to them what we're going to be doing, and hear from them on how they can be supportive of what we're doing, what they're looking for. And that will be really great and really wonderful. It's a lot of hard work that our staff is working on, and we'll be talking about this for quite a while. And then on the 30th, we had this wonderful event up in our wonderful hills. It's the Olmsted 200 project or opportunity we're having, the Parks for All People up there in the hills. We had great presentations about our longtime history and wonderful music, and oh my gosh, it was a beautiful night. I know there's others that were there that will talk about it, but what a great opportunity to hear our history, and so much the families that were involved impacted our park use and our historic work in this area. So anyway, that was fabulous. So those are the 2 items I would present this evening.
Thank
This
you.
afternoon.
This afternoon.
You ready there, Mr. Rosario?
I think I'm ready. I think I got it. I was having a little computer glitch there. So thank you very much. On the 22nd, I attended the retirement party for Vernon Jones at Lake Temescal, 30+ employee. It was very, very well attended, and it was kind of like a old timers reunion. So I really wish Vernon Jones, I'd like to congratulate him and thank him for his service. He's been an incredible presence there at Lake Temescal and in any place he's worked. So congratulations to Vernon. And then on the 27th, I attended, we had an ad hoc committee meeting for board operating guidelines, and I think we just need one more meeting and we'll be ready to present our recommendations from that committee to the full
I think I
board.
was there too.
Yes, you were there. I want to thank Lynn for her time there too as well. And then on the 27th, attended the ecology committee meeting, and appreciate the comments there. And I think we covered the structural tech pest control pest contractor, and that was well reported. Congratulations to Pamela Bites for her report. And then today, I think that's it. So yeah, somewhat limited because of, I had COVID. I got diagnosed with COVID on the 26th, and I'm doing much better, and hopefully getting ready to test tomorrow to see if I'm negative. So thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you, Director, and we're happy to hear you're doing well. Go next to Director Lane and then Director Waspy.
All right, thank you. COVID still seems to be around, so I'm wishing everybody my best in recovery.